Knife crime, is it on the rise? The latest twist in the Senate expenses scandal, and a look at state funerals. Welcome to Globe Now, I'm Affan Chowdhry. The murder of 5 young people at a Calgary party has put the spotlight on knife crime. Police are saying the perpetrator entered the home on Monday evening, grabbed a knife, and carried out the worst mass murder in the city's history. And on the same day, there were also stabbings at a Regina mall and an Ontario high school. So are knife-related attacks and murders actually on the rise in Canada? Well, according to Statistics Canada report from 2008, the number of knife-related homicides has increased since 1974. But in the last 10 years, it has stayed just above 30% of all homicides. That said, knives are 3 times more likely than guns to be used in violent crimes. In 2008, there were 23,500 victims of crimes involving knives or some kind of cutting object. And there are hotspots. There are more knife attacks in the western provinces than in the east, with Manitoba experiencing the highest percentage. And if you look at Calgary specifically, there were 3 deaths in 2011 due to quote-unquote edged weapons. Of course, these are just reported numbers, and some knife attacks will be unaccounted for in the statistics. But one thing is for sure, the Calgary murders have set a grisly standard in that city. The RCMP investigation into the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff is over. That means Nigel Wright won't be facing criminal charges over a $90,000 payment to suspended Senator Mike Duffy. Well, the Globe's chief political writer, Campbell Clark, joins us now from Ottawa to discuss. Welcome, Campbell. What does this mean for Stephen Harper?
Well, it's good news, but it doesn't mean that the Senate scandal is all over. Obviously, it's a good thing when your chief aide, your former chief aide, is not going to be accused of a crime, because Nigel Wright was the alter ego of Stephen Harper, and that would be bringing accusations of criminality right into the Prime Minister's office. Mr. Wright's the dropping the investigation means that Stephen Harper probably won't be interviewed by the RCMP, and it means that we're not going to see as many pointed questions probably come out in warrants or affidavits to obtain warrants. But the whole thing isn't over just yet. Mike Duffy is still being investigated, the senator who received the payment, and so there's still some things to come.
And presumably, you know, if it reaches that point of charges and some sort of trial, Nigel Wright could be asked to appear in a trial.
Yes, he would be obviously a witness, because if there is a trial about the $90,000 payment, well, he's the man who made it.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about Nigel Wright. What happens to him now?
Well, Mr. Wright, he came from Onyx Corp. He was a successful figure from Bay Street. Presumably, he can now go on with the kind of successful career he had without this kind of cloud over his head. He's unlikely to come back into conservative politics anytime soon, though, because, there was an effort by this Prime Minister, Mr. Harper, to distance himself from what Mr. Wright did. There's still sort of ethical questions about what he did. So it's unlikely he'll be back in any political role anytime soon, but he can move on with his life. Now,
to what extent does this development take the wind out of the sails of the opposition?
It takes some of the sting out. It doesn't take all of the sting out. Obviously, when you say, no, there's no one in the Prime Minister's office, or at least the Prime Minister's chief aide isn't guilty of any crime or won't be accused of any crime, that takes, the worst level of wrongdoing away. And of course, the opposition is, they're complaining about that. They're saying that there was grounds to go further here, at least under some legislation. But Mr. Duffy is still being investigated. There's still the possibility that additional information will come out when the RCMP swears affidavits for that investigation. And remember, when the RCMP was investigating Nigel Wright, that's how some very revealing and embarrassing information about the Conservative Party, the Conservative senators, and the Prime Minister's office came out. So there's still a lot to come here. And now that the RCMP investigation is over, well, the Ethics Commissioner can get involved, look into what Mr. Wright did, look into what other Conservatives did, and presumably when the case against Mr. Duffy is wrapped up, then the Senate Ethics Commissioner can get involved. So there's still several steps to come.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Campbell.
Thank you.
Well, we want to hear from you. The Senate expenses scandal has dogged Stephen Harper. How does this latest development change your opinion of the Prime Minister? Send us your thoughts and tweets on Twitter. We're at Globe Now. And now to a somber moment in Canadian political history. Over 1,000 people are expected at Toronto's St. James Cathedral for Jim Flaherty's state funeral. Being honored with a state funeral is actually a very rare thing in Canada. Our digital politics editor, Chris Hene, tells you why.
Jim Flaherty has been given a very rare honor, a state funeral. A state funeral is a special public ceremony organized by the Government of Canada, along with the family of the deceased. So who gets a state funeral, and why is it a big deal for Flaherty's family? There are no rules exactly about who gets one, but the tradition has been that prime ministers, governors general, and sitting cabinet ministers who die in office get a state funeral. The first prime minister to get one was Sir John A. Macdonald after he died in 1891, and the most recent was Pierre Trudeau's in 2000. But Flaherty's state funeral is a little unusual because he wasn't actually a sitting cabinet minister when he died. He had been finance minister for 8 years when he resigned in March, and he died in April. On a few very rare occasions, other prominent people have been given state funerals. The first was in 1868, after founding father Thomas D'Arcy McGee was assassinated. NDP leader Jack Layton was given one in 2011. He had died of cancer only a few months after becoming leader of the opposition in Ottawa.
Well, that's it for Globe Now. Thanks for watching. If you've got a minute, hop onto Twitter and share your thoughts on Jim Flaherty's state funeral or the tragedy in Calgary. You can find us at Globe Now. Thanks again for watching. I'm Affan Chowdhry.